All right, so information about Summer Anis and Summer Helm just came out, and so here's my quick thoughts about them. And first, right off the bat, they are looking pretty good. I would say actually both of them are pretty good. Initially, it seemed like I was a little bit hesitant on Helm, but the more I think about it, the more it does open up a lot of other opportunities for some other teams. So this is actually not bad for Helm, and same with Summer Anis. Summer Anis, actually, in particular, primarily about Summer Anis. So she is a supporter, shotgun and electric and burst skill 3. So that's probably like these. This is the biggest thing, right? Electric, and so she will be supporting the electric team that is kind of just recently getting more used, like volume, Mast, Guillotine, and Scarlet. And so she actually fills in the Exodia final piece. And I would say actually this is actually a pretty good team, especially with the reloading speed. This is greatly beneficial for Scarlet, right? And then also the attack buff. Now you might wonder or think about, well, actually, isn't attack buff kind of like too much? Because there's already Scarlet already has too much attack buff, self attack buff, and same with Guillotine, right? They reach about like Guillotine reaches about like 80 to 90% of attack buff, and then Scarlet reaches at 115% attack buff. And so now, like, what about this one? The way she works, or at least the attack buff that she will do, is it's based off her own attack also. So this is where you want multiple duplicates also, for some people. But here's the math because I already did it for you guys. Bam. All right, so I have a few examples real quick. I had a Modernia that has full OL and core 7, and she was sitting at 116 attack. And I had, this is the only attacker that SSR that I could have found, uh, that is LV0 and tier 9, that is not OL'd, and she is sitting at 86,000. And then for comparison, also, this is what I'm gonna use to compare what's the potential attack of Summer Anis. She could be sitting at, because I have a Dorothy with full OL, and she could be sitting at 95k, or if we don't have any copies, she's be sitting at 72k. And basically with the 55% attack buff, if we have something, if you're like a Leviathan or Whale, you would be giving 52k. Okay, this is just relative to my level. Okay, that it's not exactly for you guys that you're gonna get 52k, but this is the way I'm gonna do it. This is like it's relative to the calculations of these. And actually it might, the percentage might actually be worth more for lower level people because of how OL works. But anyways, it's 52k, and then if it's just out of the box, it's roughly about 40k. And basically what happens there is, I tried to look into it. Summer Anis buff to attackers with no investments will be roughly between 46 to 60% attack increase. So if you don't have any limit break on attackers, then you would be getting that. But if you have like invested on the attackers, you know, have core 7 and max OL, we'd be looking at about 34 to 45% attack increase. And assuming that we kind of use Summer Anis, which really makes sense because she is buffing Electrocode allies. So what we could be looking at is like she'll be buffing like it's really like Scarlet Guillotine right now. Obviously, there's other units like Isabel, Haran, but we're not really like using them, right? Like we're what other Electro units that we have here? In any case, though, but yeah, there's not that much. Oh yeah, you have Maiden actually too, and Roads. Anyways, so we have Guillotine and Scarlet. Really, this is what we're gonna be looking at. Like we're talking about raid bossing and just direct like fighting the boss, right? So we're looking at Guillotine have a self buff of like 85%, and Scarlet has a self buff of 115%. And but then if you use the staple team where you're using volume, Mast, and then a Scarlet, Guillotine, then that means that you don't really have any other attack buffers. And since Mask can defense down to 0, I could kind of roughly estimate how much damage increase they would do with Summer Anis being added. And we would be seeing about 19 to 32% damage increase on Guillotine and 15 to 26% damage on Scarlet. Let's just say like 20 to 25%. That's probably along more the lines. So what do I think on Summer Anis? She is actually pretty good, but then again, there's not really any other units to like we're gonna see this use, right? Like no one's really using Haran for bossing that much unless you don't really have any other units to use, and Maiden, it's really like same. So the other one is Isabel, but you know she doesn't have a lot of like use just yet. But anyways, that is really what's going to be Summer Anis. She is basically Privity 2.0, and she is looking to be pretty good. But at the same time, also you got now that I showed it, it's basically just the same as Privity, right? Like Privity's buff on skill 1 is 23.61. So and if you look at the damage actually so this is, you're gonna compare it to this one, so she's definitely better for the Electro. So if you're building Electro team, you don't need to put your Privity in here. You can use just Summer Anis, and also the reload is pretty huge for Scarlet also, right? That's another pretty huge thing. So it will definitely like boost your Scarlet by a lot. I don't know about the skill 2. Skill 2 is kind of like it does it just does more damage to interruption, so it's like it is what it is, right? But burst, this one is what I'm not 100% sure of. It does increase her reloading speed, so it does 27.72 plus also 49.28, and so I guess like it's actually not a bad thing. And damage a strong element 42%, so actually yeah, she is looking pretty promising. And if you do end up like using that team, right, where you're kind of using this team with Electro, this does have a bad energy generation. So yeah, because like there's nothing really that you could use to like quick fire. So like previously I was actually using Helm because I was quick firing her, and then I don't really use her heal as much, as more like just like emergencies. You since Anis is shotgun, I think there is a good potential for this, because shotgun do have, if she is ends up being a clip shotgun, that she might have a good decent enough energy generation as well. Now let's move on to Helm. Helm actually looks pretty good as well. I don't think she is super broken just yet, but I think that she does open up a good unit as a substitute depending on the enemy. So this time around, it's a little bit different, right? Anis is based on electric code allies, so you want her to be partnered with that. But for Helm, she can actually be used against Electro enemies, but not, it doesn't have to be iron allies. So that's a thing. So she's attacker, assault rifle, iron, and then burst 2 with 20 seconds, which is looking pretty good as well. And she does, I think her main thing, well, there's two main things that for her. One is the cooldown reduction. So this allows us to have another, like basically similar to Dala. And if you don't have Dala, then this is a good opportunity to kind of just have a burst 2 unit that will reduce cooldown. And this actually is really good because it will also open up some teams again also for solo raid. So because like sometimes like we're just looking for a better, like we're using Pepper and like Summer Mary, and we use like Pepper on one, and then use Dala there, and then use Summer Mary, but then you don't have anyone else to kind of like for cooldown reduction, right? And so this one ends up being pretty good as a flex. You can end up like just using her as just a cooldown reduction, but obviously that's not really gonna make good full use of her. So another thing that is big on her is this one, which is damage taken. And basically this gets up to 28% damage taken. And what I really want to point out to this is it's basically 100% uptime for 28% damage increase. So this is actually pretty huge, and not to mention you don't necessarily have to burst with her, so you could actually use her in your novel Snow White team comp. So Iron team comp, really right now I would only really recommend as an Iron team comp is like your is Snow White and Maxwell, right? And so this is the popular Iron team comp, which in my opinion is like it's basically the highest DPS. So you could do this. Sometimes like I switch out that, and I usually like so this is my Sinister team that I did one shot on, but obviously Modernia was just more like as a bonus damage, right, in there. So it's not necessarily that she's synergizing with these other ones. And so I can actually see that using either obviously you could do that, or you could use her instead as this one. And not to mention also, sometimes people don't use novel and litter because like their Snow White team is like air, their third team. So like their first team ends up being like Alice, Bunny, and then the second team is like litter, novel, and then like Scarlet and Modernia. So for people that don't consider Snow White Maxwell as their second team but more as their third team, then you could actually end up like using you're using this, right? You're probably using this like a support Snow White team, or it could be like this. Anyways, regardless of how it is, the way I see it is it does open up, like you can now just replace this and put them together, or you could freely use Miranda as well. And in the future there might be better buffer on burst 1 as well that doesn't have cooldown reduction, and that will open her up to be used. And the downside obviously is it's just specifically for electric code, right? Like enemy electric code, really. So that's one downside, because obviously I would choose Dala instead if the enemy is not electric. But the way I see it is she is going to be a really good flex unit, and it doesn't have to be that she is like always used. But regardless of that, you don't really need to actually, she's attacker too, so that is actually kind of nice. But just be wary if you end up like using attacker. You probably don't want to overload her. Yeah, you definitely don't want to overload her. It's like what if she ends up stealing buffs of Maxwell or Miranda, right? So just food for thought for those people that are considering overloading her. It might actually do more harm if you end up like, because if you end up using her with Maxwell, she might end up yoinking the buffs as well. Anyways, that's my quick thoughts on these two units, and they are looking overall pretty good. I would definitely get at least one copy of them for each of them, because like you want to, if you want to build like for these like units that are going to be specific elements, electric team and then iron team, I think these are definitely good future investments. And not to mention also, because they are limited units, we are, it might take like a year or so before they get a rerun, right? So that's another thing. Anyways, those are my quick thoughts, and I will be testing as usual whenever there's a new character release. We'll be testing Anis. I think I might end up being asleep during after the maintenance, so I might do it the following day. I guess we'll see what I end up doing. But anyways, that's all my thoughts on these ones. I'll see you guys next time.